The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Hello everyone and welcome to a very special presentation of the Town of Colonie and Colonie Public Library. Today we're going to talk about some legislation, we're going to talk about medical care, health care, insurance, a lot of different things, a cornucopia of issues that we will be talking about with a gentleman who knows an awful lot about medical issues and prescription drug plans and everything else, as well as legislation. He is Assembly Member John McDonald. Welcome, John.
Tom, good to see you again.
It's great to see you. I'm well. You just came off a tumultuous few months getting the budget taken care of.
Yes.
It was a little bit late, but not terribly late.
Right.
At least I guess the governor extended it until when? And you only needed about a week, right?
Yeah, he extended it until May 31st,
Okay.
I think, but we really wanted to get the budget done in a timely manner to give certainty to school districts and many other components that really need to plan their year out. So, you know, it was a week late, but as they always say, an on-time budget's good, a solid budget's even better.
Well, with some of the programs that were passed, I mean, there really have been some pretty progressive programs that were passed, like Raise the Age, Uber coming to the Capital District.
Yep, absolutely.
Which is a great thing, and we'll get into some of that later.
Sure.
But what I'd like to talk to you about right now is the EPIC program. EPIC is from what I understand, it is to supplement Part D Medicare.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, when you look at the origins of EPIC, it was designed for individuals 65 years of age and older. Well, in 2006, Medicare Part D came into being. Medicare Part D jumped in front of the state EPIC plan. But what we've noticed, particularly in the last couple of years, is more and more patients are moving back towards EPIC. And the reason being is that the Medicare Part D benefit, for as good as it may be, is still coming up short, or we are seeing, because of the rising cost of prescription drugs and the rising utilization of prescription drugs, we're just seeing people break through that donut hole at a much earlier stage. So it is very complicated. You really need to be just short of a Rhodes Scholar to work it all out. But when you look at plan design, and a lot of these patients join these Medicare Advantage plans or Medicare Choice plans through the HMOs like CDPHP, Blue Shield, MVP, the drug benefit has certain limits. What we do with our patients, we recommend is EPIC is a great backup because it'll help lower your co-payments on a regular basis. But more importantly, when you jump into that donut hole, it may very much well be your lifesaver, and no more than $20 a prescription. The other thing that I want to mention before I forget, because I know how you and I can get talking, and before you know it, we're off in another distant land, is that probably about 3 years ago in our budget, we actually at the state expanded the income thresholds to bring more people underneath the tent for EPIC. So for people who may have had EPIC going back 7-8 years ago and said, oh, I don't need it anymore because I have Medicare Part D, it's worth it to go back and revisit that now because, one, more people are eligible. It's a bigger tent. And secondly, it actually provides a lot of opportunity without them having to pay any premiums up front. In other words, as the drug costs continue to mount, it adds towards their deductible. Once their deductible hits the threshold, they're in the co-payment mode.
Now, John, you said we tell our patients, and I want everyone to know that in addition to being a representative of the people, that John also is a proprietor of Maris Pharmacy in Cohoes. So you're a registered pharmacist. You still teach at the College of Pharmacy?
I'm an adjunct professor, but it's mostly on site at my pharmacy.
Okay, so when you say our patients, they are your patients.
Constituents, patients, residents. At the end of the day, they're all customers. They need service, right?
That's absolutely right. You said that EPIC. You mentioned it. You have to have. There's a lot to it, but is it user-friendly when you go in to apply for it?
It is. It's much more simplistic now because the categories are so much broader. So it's a matter of filling out this literally one-page form submitting obviously a copy of your Social Security statement, and away you go. And the help desk is a help. The other thing that really is important, and you know this working with the county, through the Department of Aging, that's supported by the State Office of Aging, we now actually provide revenue resources for high cap or basically individuals to be in the community to help individuals navigate not only EPIC but navigate the whole Medicare Part D process. It's inappropriate for a medical provider like myself or a physician or a nurse to say to Tom, you should be in this plan. We can't do that because the reason being is that some providers would do that, not always in the patient's best interest, but in the provider's best interest.
Right.
So that's taboo. However, at the same token, I give a good example in my hometown of Cohoes. The Cohoes Waterloo Green Island area is serviced by Senior Services of Albany out of the Senior Center in Cohoes, where there's two individuals who are they work for Senior Services of Albany. They're contracted with the county in one way or the other.
That's right.
To provide that unbiased support, not only to help them with EPIC, but to help them with the overall health and welfare choices, and what Medicare Part D program do I join? Am I eligible for the low-income subsidy? Because there's a lot of individuals who really are eligible that just kind of fly underneath the radar screen because they just go about their life. And as you know, with the senior population, considering the times they grew up in, they don't ask for much. They just kind of go about their way and do their thing. And a lot of people were hesitant to actually take public support or public assistance. And that really shouldn't be the case. As I always said with the senior citizens, you paid your dues. We want to make sure you get a return on your investment.
And that's one of the challenges of being with the Albany County Department for Aging, or any Department for Aging, is to convince people that they've paid for this their whole lives.
Yeah.
Because as you said, there's a certain pride
Yeah.
that people have. I noticed it especially up in the hill towns of Albany County.
Absolutely. Well, they're a hardy, independent bunch to begin with, just to live there, right?
And they take care of each other.
They sure do.
But there comes a point where it just doesn't make any sense not to take part in some of the programs that we have. Throughout New York State, and especially in Albany County, we have a very vibrant aging department, and some of the things that we do are amazing. And we've gotten up into the hill towns, and we're starting to do things up there. You also just talked a little bit about taking care of themselves. They like to take care of themselves. I'd like to talk to you for a second about self-advocacy for people who are older Americans living in your district, 108th, or in Albany County. It looks like there are going to be some cuts coming down from the feds in the area of the Older Americans Act and some other, transportation. It looked like home delivered meals were about to be cut, congregate meals, some of the health programs. How important is it for older people to take care of themselves as far as contacting people like you?
It's critical. It's interesting. Last week, Paul Tonko and I did a forum in Waterville to seniors, and it was refreshing to hear the energy in these individuals and their concerns. They watch the same TV stations we watch.
Absolutely.
And when you hear some of the, I'm going to call it rhetoric at this stage of the game, because when I hear some of these things about taking food out of the mouth of seniors, I can't find any human being that would condone that. I just don't know of any, although we hear it. And we need to be very vocal. Constituents need to tap all their local elected officials. They tap all their elected officials. A lot of times it starts at the local level, and I gladly accept those pass-ups because we really need to be able to give these examples of why it's important that we not hurt our seniors, because the reality is a cut here may lead to a larger expense over there. And I think we've learned, and I've been involved now in the state legislature. I'm on a variety of different committees and actually regional think tanks that are really starting to look at what was progressive ideas. Even hardcore conservatives are saying, oh, wait a minute, this actually works out well. If we actually provide a little bit additional support, not throwing it away, but provide real reasonable supports that are traditionally not covered care to individuals that are high stress. Maybe it's diabetes, for example, which is an extremely expensive disease. Maybe it's patients with congestive heart failure. If we provide them those additional supports, we can prevent these unnecessary readmissions to the hospitalizations, which is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we need to have individuals speaking their minds, letting their state legislators, letting their congressmen. I mean, in our area, we're blessed to have Paul Tonko, who's very responsive. I don't think a day doesn't go by where my office and his office is not talking about one item or not, and more often than not, we're reaching out to the county executive, Dan McCoy, and talking to his staff to help us, because we have to work together as a team to make sure our seniors are taken care of.
And that's one thing that seems to be happening in Albany County, is that, what at one point years ago might have been a little fractured among different government entities starting to come together.
Yeah.
And that's something the governor has spoken about, is cooperation between the different governments.
Yeah.
And that's an important part of saving money, first of all, and also of getting things done.
Absolutely. If anything, it helps us to eliminate wasting resources, which, quite honestly, I don't know any government that is resource rich at this stage of the game. We need to be able to continue to serve our constituents, but we need to have a good team-like approach. And by the way, when you work together as a team, there's another thing that you really can't put a price on. It's preventing that person from falling through the cracks.
Right.
When that person falls through the cracks, they don't just trip, they fall deeply. And it can be quite expensive to bring them back and recover.
What are you most proud about as far as this legislative session, the budget is concerned?
It's kind of funny. I guess I'm going to focus on infrastructure, water, fix our pipes, water and sewer infrastructure. We've seen a lot of things here in the capital regions, but that really, look at Hoosick Falls, the whole 9 yards. As a former mayor who spent a lot of time working with our waterfront communities, we've got this huge, ambitious $100 million cleanup project preventing sewer overflows going in the river. I know it's not really a morning type discussion, but it's $100 million that our local government has to pick up, and we're going to be able to provide additional resources to support that project. I'm happy that ride sharing is finally part of the capital region. I'm glad to see that we've done some social justice issues, when it looks at particularly raise the age.
Right. 16
and 17-year-olds who, yes, make mistakes, and actually commit crimes, need to learn a lesson, but they don't need to be learning a lesson next to a lifelong felon in the correction system. They need to learn it in the proper form, because as we've studied the brain more and more, we realize 16 and 17-year-olds just are not able to really fully contemplate and understand their actions.
And I see that's something that you and Assembly Member Pat Fahey and the county executive were very, very instrumental in, which is the
ILS,
indigent
legal services. We didn't get the whole banana there on that one, but we did get some support to help, as the counties strive to meet the requirements now, they will be reimbursed for those, which is helpful. It's not going to offset some of the other costs. We've had this is a tough year for counties, in all fairness. There were some cuts to foster care. I've talked to Dan about this, and Kathy over in Rensselaer County. We're not happy about it, but unfortunately at some point when you're in the negotiations, and the person who makes the ultimate decision says, this is what I want, and what are you willing to trade off on it? We don't have anything left to trade off. It is what it is. The same token, I was very happy. One of the things that I pushed very early on in the budget process with the counties was to provide more resources for the 911 system. As technology continues to evolve and change, we have more and more demand on the system, but we don't have resources. We were able to bring millions and millions of dollars more into that process to help them. And I already know, I talked to Sheriff Apple about it. He's ecstatic about a recent award he got because of this funding, and more funding to follow, which is critical, because they are doing that, by the way. And you talk about shared services. Rensselaer, Albany, Saratoga County are working collaboratively together on the communication system, which they're maintaining their individuality, but the backbone of the system, which is where the real money is spent but nobody sees, is now being funded together. And we want to reward that type of behavior even more.
Now, this By the way, this show is on in the morning, afternoon, and at evening, so
Okay.
we can talk about anything.
We can talk about sewage and sludge all day long.
We can talk
then,
about
yeah.
all of
Okay.
that stuff. And Cohoes has had a challenge with some of the water main breaks and things like
Yeah,
that in
yeah.
the city. And I know the city of Troy has had a
Yeah,
tremendous,
yeah. Oh, any
and Albany.
any city established in 1861 is going to have a few old pipes around, and we're all working on it. But even here we are in Colonie, sometimes they actually have breaks too. So, and it's very difficult. I can tell you, as a person now who's actually had the privilege to serve the public for 17 years, it's hard sometimes to spend the money on the stuff underground that nobody sees, when the reality is you need to do it. And we're providing that funding to help those local governments not only contemplate, but actually get involved with and complete projects that are going to really serve the public good.
I was reading in one of your newsletters, and your newsletters are tremendous, and your weekly updates and everything else that you get to your constituents. The mental health system, has it had a negative impact by the budget, or has money been restored to some of the programs?
The good thing is, we continue to provide more funding, more capital funding to build more housing. We had a $2.5 billion housing bond overall in this project that's been approved. That's going to provide a lot of supportive housing, which, as you know, is one key element of helping an individual with mental health and other issues to get back to a sustainable life. At the same token, there's more money out there to help the nonprofits that do all of our good work, to help them with their capital costs on repair, replacement. More importantly, we finally did what I think is something long overdue, providing raises to the direct care workers, whether it's the disabled, whether it's those with mental health, providing them at least a start, a 3.25% increase in their hourly rate effective January 1st of next year, and another 3.25% April 1st next year. It's been 7 years. It's been a long time. That's how the state's fiscal position improved. But we really adopted the moniker and the slogan of the campaign, "Be fair to direct care." Those individuals that dedicate their lives to taking care of our most vulnerable population have not been compensated fairly. And we've had a huge amount of turnover. You just need to look at the back of the Sunday Times Union, the classified every Sunday. Full page ads.
All about that, right?
It's all about that. And we're trying to make sure that people decide that it's more meaningful to stay and take care of human beings than it is to go flip a burger at McDonald's. Nothing wrong with a burger, but quite frankly, it's more about those who need our help.
We have, at the Department for Aging, we fund a couple of programs that provide home health aides to people.
There's another population.
We have no home health aides to provide the services.
I know.
There's a need, but we can't spend the money because there aren't enough people in the field.
And it's been one of those banging your head against the wall type situation, because the home health care agencies have gotten a triple whammy. Minimum wage increase, paid family leave. We support those things, obviously. Workers' comp, which we've made some major changes in this budget that are going to have a positive impact for the employee, the injured worker, but also the businesses. And I consider nonprofits and the home health care agencies, they're businesses.
Yeah, they are.
They are. They're more than a going concern. We're providing some workers' comp relief, which I've been hearing that more and more. But still, here's the real riddle. The reason they exist today is because the government said, hey, we can't take care of these patients. We don't want them in nursing homes. We don't want them in institutions. We're going to put them in the community. The problem is the dollars didn't follow as well as they should have. Now, candidly, just like in any other aspect, education is a good example. We spend $26 billion in education a year, and there's still never enough money. There's never enough money to do everything we want to do. And that's, I think, a reflection of the commitment and the passion of the people that really want to see the best for our kids. Same applies for those in our elderly population. We want to see our seniors taken care of and respected. And we need to keep pushing to provide those resources. It's a challenge.
Now, I'd like to speak for a minute. The governor has said that he is going to make New York State the first state to be age-friendly. And that's a program from the World Health Organization and AARP. We're very, very proud that Albany County was accepted into the program as a county. And there is no other state in the nation that has been designated as age-friendly, but Governor Cuomo would like New York State to be age-friendly. And we're just in the beginning of our age-friendly program here in Albany County. I happen to be the director of that program, so I know a little bit about it. What I want to ask you is, I'm not positive when I read the budget if funds for services for seniors have been increased or decreased. I'm not exactly sure.
I can't say they've been remarkably increased. I think there's just a steady, slow, gradual, either flat line or maybe a little bit of an increase. And that's the interesting part when you talk about age friendly. I mean, obviously you're friendly and you're aging.
And I'm aging, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Believe me.
But, the resources have to follow. I think where we look at it, we can't just look and confine ourselves to the aging budget. Mm-hmm. We have to look at the larger aspects. And I always go back to programs such as supportive housing.
Right.
$2.5 billion. Granted, New York City is going to get its lion's share. But, we have a lot of great nonprofit developers in our region that are providing the appropriate, cost-effective communities for our seniors to live in. And, if you can address the housing up front, it helps them to afford the other services and needs. And I think that's part of that. But it's not just one thing that's age-friendly. It's about making sure there's proper nutrition, mm-hmm. there's affordable prescription drug coverage, which we started this conversation, transportation, which we actually pushed back on a couple cuts in this budget to make sure that they stayed there, and of course having a safe, secure environment for our seniors to live out the remaining years.
Yeah, it's very important, and the whole purpose of age friendly is not just for seniors either. It's to make sure that people age friendly throughout the process of living. Yeah. And if something is desirable for an older person, it's going to be desirable for a younger person, like curb cuts and places to put wheelchairs, handicapped accessibilities. So that's what we're working on in Albany County. And John, I know that you've been a supporter of ours, as has Pat Fahey and some other people. And it's interesting because we have support from just about every municipality in the county at this point, which is required by the World Health Organization. So I think it's going to be an important program here in Albany County. When you go to the budget, when you go to budget hearings and things like that, what's it like? I mean, when they say, okay, they're in caucus, do the caucuses get contentious? I don't think, we hear them all the time, but we don't know what it's about.
There's different, the budget hearings, quite frankly, are very long.
Right.
I really, now that I'm on Ways and Means, I really try to spend as much time as possible, but you're talking 12, 14-hour days of 50 to 60 to 70 important components of each thing, and it's 14 different days of budget hearings, and that's an opportunity for people to say their piece. When we try to, and the Assembly majority tries to get our positions together, then we go behind closed doors. The majority caucus, 107 members, give or take, haggle it out behind the scenes, and it's a very interesting process. It starts off with the committee chairs giving a debriefing of what the executive proposed. That brings up a whole host of questions, comments, and they're not really ready for public consumption, I'll tell you that.
Right.
And then we start to work on what do we want to see, what's our response, and that's where we work on. And this year we delivered at March 14th our response to the governor's budget, what the Assembly's principles are. And the Senate does the same thing. And then we debrief the members again on where we're at. And then that's when it moves to the 3 men in a room. But in that whole process, there is a lot of fluid discussion going on between the Speaker and the majority in the Assembly, and of course from the Senate leader and the majority in the Senate, because they're in the room. It's a very interesting process. It's extremely long and frustrating. At the same token, you want to balance the concerns of your constituents. But even this past weekend, when we finished up the budget process, we are gathered for conference at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning to, here's where we're finally at with Raise the Age. Here's where we're finally at with workers' comp reform. And that's just the way it goes. And I give my speaker, Carl Hastie, a lot of credit. He is extraordinarily patient. He allows everyone to say their piece, whether it's once, twice, 3 times. And at the same point, we make a decision. And we make it collectively, understanding that we're not going to get everything we want. but we're trying to get the best for our constituents.
So when you say 3 men in a room, it's 3 men in a room that are really bringing back the wishes of their...
Well, it's impossible to put... I would never want to see all the assembly members in the room with the governor. It just would not be a good situation. It just doesn't make sense. You know, at the end of the day, that's why you have leaders. And these leaders take back your positions. And, you know, listen, you know, good example, ride sharing. We had some conflict between upstate and downstate. Downstate already has ride sharing, so they really weren't too... They said, listen, we see all the good and the bad with it. We're not really excited about it for upstate. We don't want to do anything. We had to fight for that. And it was a challenge. And the speaker's smart. He knows his people, he knows the caucus, and we work it out. But it was challenging. At the same token, you know, people like us who believe in the intention of raise the age and don't have I had no problem with it. But, you know, it's obviously number one priority for the New York City members because we have mass incarceration going on in New York City. So, you know, it's like anything else. Everyone's elected to represent their little part of the state. The part that's very interesting to me is that I don't think until you really get behind closed doors in the caucus and members talk very freely. And I remember the first year I was there, I was like, oh my God, how could they say that? And then I thought about it, I said, wait a minute. They were elected by their constituents to speak for them.
Right, exactly.
And they reflect those issues. So, you know, listen, some of these issues will never be an issue in little old Green Island. Never in a million years. But that being said, they're there representing their constituents just like I'm there to represent my constituents when I'm speaking. You know, a good example is shared services. And, you know, Mayor McNulty in Green Island was very firm. He didn't take 15 seconds to figure out where she stood about that program. And I made sure to carry that message very clear through this process. And basically we've taken this program that was forced on referendum, which didn't make sense, and made it something where the county executive can continue to do what he's been doing for years, which is bringing together all the municipal leaders to say, here, what can we do together? They've been doing it. This is the part that frustrated me with that whole process. I used to be at that table. I know how well the cities and the towns and the villages work with the county executive and the mutual respect that they have. And this program that was being forced down just wasn't a good fit. We've changed it. We've given now at least something that they can work with. And as I said to the county executive and to the mayors, use this as an opportunity to show off what you've been doing. More importantly, to demonstrate to the state those barriers that are preventing you from really lowering your cost to your taxpayers.
You know, it's funny because when I worked in the county executive's office and I was in on some of those discussions, a lot of times the municipalities didn't even realize that some of the things that they were doing were actually shared services.
You know, I can tell you right now, mayors and supervisors and county executives, they're too darn busy doing their job to stop and say, oh, let me raise the flag and say I did this. And I think that has been the biggest challenge. And, you know, I obviously, not only, you know, being former president of the Conference of Mayors, I work closely with mayors throughout the state, and I'm one of only 2 mayors in the state assembly. You know, so it kind of helps. But I've talked to Peter Baines at NICOM about this, saying, Peter, you know, our biggest problem is we don't beat our chests, I guess, big enough. And at the same token, I don't know if I'd encourage that. I just encourage them to speak in a unified voice, which is what they're going to be doing.
Top 3 priorities for the rest of the session for you?
Well, it'd be nice to see some work on ethics.
Okay.
That kind of got silent over this session. I'm always a believer that we can still do more about transparency in government. I've got a couple bills that I'm trying to push that requires legislators like myself to put my financial disclosure right on my state website and my campaign website. And the same would apply to candidates running for a legislative office. I really believe the ethical failings have been primarily from the fact that people just don't know who they're electing.
Right.
You know what? Disclosure report is a good start. I still am a firm supporter of doing more in regards to opioid and heroin addiction. That really has turned out to be my real bailiwick. It's just a spot I'm perfectly situated as. So I'm very focused on that. And I still am trying to find ways to make it easier to relieve the tax burden to do business in the state of New York. Not easy.
It's not easy at all, and you do a great job.
Thanks, Tom.
John, I want to thank you for being with us. Assemblymember John McDonald from the 108th Assembly District. And I want you to join us on our regular program, Young at Heart, as we have Father Peter Young coming on this month. So I'll see you with John, and I'll see you with Father Young. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. Thank you to the town of Colonie, Colonie Public Library, for this very special program. Good night.